My name is Eli Hagsley. When I was 23 years old, I lived in Lubbock, Texas. By that point, I dropped out of college, but most of my friends still went to Texas Tech. I only had one semester left, but considering that I wasn't planning to leave Lubbock anytime soon, I just figured I would take some time off before having no more excuses as to why I didn't want to find a real job. Most people in Lubbock will say the same thing about what there is to do here. Basically, jack shit. But I was always pretty okay with that. I didn't ask for much. As long as there were places to eat and at least one movie theater playing current films, I wouldn't die of boredom. And we had that, so I was fine. I lived on the west side, outside of the main loop, but still in biking distance from my favorite places. There's this old Tex-Mex place down the road past Hillview Street that I would sometimes frequent. I'd stumble in at 2 or 3 a.m. after a decent night of drinking. The place was open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and those fuckers could cook up a mean taco at any one of those hours. One night, I'd been out drinking with my buddy Grant. Grant had a strong affinity for whiskey, or I guess just alcohol in general. He wasn't one of those booze snob types who drinks fancy shit just to say he's drinking it. No, Grant just liked being drunk. Whatever got him there the quickest and didn't taste too close to piss worked just fine. I usually just stuck with beer. We'd hit some old dive that he wanted to go to, Sally's Pub and Grill. He said he knew the owner, Sally, that she used to sleep with his dad. We met in the parking lot as the sun was setting. Of course, Grant shows up to the place already with a solid buzz going. He stumbles up to me as I'm locking up my bike and proceeds to give me shit for still not owning a car. "Just saying, man," he cocks, locking his dead grandma's Chevy Impala with his key clicker. "There's nothing like going fucking fast." I followed Grant's obnoxiously orange Tommy Bahama shirt through the side door of the pub, trying to look as unrelated to him as I could, as he starts barking Sally's name the minute we walk in. The inside was bleak. There were 3 construction men sitting at a table, all eyeing Grant as if they recognized him. The one on the left rolled his eyes. At the bar, some old guy is sleeping next to a half-emptied glass of Jack and Coke. Grant's yelling doesn't even faze him. "Miss Sally, I'm parched out here. Help a poor boy out." Sally really was the type of woman that would sleep with Grant's father. She was thick and sweaty and sort of smelled like burnt eggs. Her blonde hair was a mangled mess, stuffed inside of a hairnet that was slicing into her fat forehead. She grinned a beefy smile at Grant as she came from the kitchen. The way she looked at him made me uncomfortable. A flirtatious smirk was plastered across her face, and she made every excuse to touch Grant as they talked. And he made no move to turn her down. Anything for a free drink. She served us a few rounds and fixed me a grilled cheese sandwich that bled with grease, and me and Grant shot the shit till about 1 a.m. I carried him out the side door, turning down Sally's multiple attempts to drive him home, or have him stay at her house. I knew that she may have done it before, but I didn't want to think about having any involvement in whatever the hell her and Grant did alone. I grabbed Grant's keys from his left pocket and unlocked his car, throwing him into the passenger side. Then I went around and grabbed my bike and stuffed it into the back seat. It took me about 5 tries to spark the engine of the car to life. Grant lived on the other side of town, so I figured I'd just bring him to my place and have him crash on my couch. I didn't want to be out biking this late. Plus, I was tired and still sort of drunk. I mindlessly followed the lines of the road, listening to talk radio and Grant's snoring. As I crossed under the overpass near my neighborhood, I saw the sign for Almeida's, the 24-hour Tex-Mex place near my house. It was irresistible. I pulled into the parking lot and I slapped Grant awake. He came to just long enough for me to tell him I was going inside, and then he passed right back out. I figured I'd just leave him in the car. I rolled down the back windows a bit, and I locked the car. Grant's face was pressed hard against the glass, smearing spit on the window. I walked inside and greeted the younger woman at the register. The older lady in the kitchen turned a lazy glance my way and then went back to cooking. I ordered 2 chicken tacos. She charged me $3.50, and I went to sit at a bench near the doors next to those quarter machines. One was full of bouncy balls, the other had some dinosaur-looking toys, but they were all deformed and made with some neon plastic that hurt my eyes. Outside the glass window, I could see car lights gliding across the highway. Some dingy streetlights lit the roads below, and in the parking lot there was only the dim, flickering glow of the neon pink sign spelling Almeida's in poorly drawn cursive. The lot was empty, except for the Impala and Grant's squished face flashing in the strobe of the pink light. It was sort of mesmerizing, the pink flashes. I watched Grant's smushed face glow and fade over and over, on and off. He seemed so peaceful. For a second, I forgot how arrogant he was, and I actually felt sort of sad for him. I didn't like him prostituting himself to a slug like Sally for a few drinks, but that's just what he'd become. One day he was scared of the darkness, and the next day he's just living in it. The younger lady at the counter called me over for my tacos, so I walked over to take the bag. To the left of the counter was a container full of little salsa cups, so I grabbed a few, and I tossed them in the paper bag, and as I headed towards the door, I saw a tall man peering through the driver's side window of the Impala. He had his hands cupped over his eyes, looking in at Grant. The pink light flashes, and it illuminated some naked body. His fingers were long, and his skin shone like it was polished leather, wrinkled and gray, tightly wrapped around this lanky frame. I couldn't tell if I was seeing things correctly. The strobing pink light kept flashing, casting color over the man, and he was fixed on Grant. I could hear the muffled sound of his middle finger frantically tapping on the window. I didn't know I'd kept walking forward until the automatic door slid open in front of me. The man's face shot up at me. His face was ovular, and his nose looked like 2 holes had been stabbed in the middle of his face with a pencil. He just stared at me. 2 pearl white eyeballs flashing on and off in the pink light, its small mouth forming an O shape. I couldn't really move. We stared at each other for half a second before it leapt backwards into the darkness and ran away. I stood paralyzed at the doorway. My grip on the bag had torn holes into the paper. The light kept flickering across the empty lot, Grant's sleeping face still just stuck to the window, completely undisturbed. I was no longer hungry. I ran to the car and started it up quickly, driving with the high beams on the rest of the way home. I needed it to not be nighttime anymore, and I wanted to be sober. I couldn't comprehend if what I'd seen actually occurred, but I was pretty damn sure it had. The wide eyes flashed in my head over and over again, on and off. For once I wished that Almeida's wasn't so close to my house. I turned and drove to Grant's house instead. The next day I woke up to the sounds of Grant on the phone loudly talking to someone about his politics. I was surprised I had actually fallen asleep. I was up very late. Grant came into the room, placing his phone on his shoulder and making some gesture like blah, blah, blah with his hands, as if the other person was more politically uneducated than he was. "Hey, you hungry? Oh, and thanks for taking me home last night, man. I owe you." I told him I wasn't too hungry and that I should probably get going. But he made me stay until he finished his phone debate. I fell back into the couch and rubbed my eyes. The man's face still flashed in my eyes. Visions of its slim, pink limbs shooting backwards into the darkness. Grant walked in holding my torn bag of tacos. He doesn't even ask before unloading them onto the table, taking a seat and finishing his phone call. You should have woken me up and told me we were going to Almeida's, you son of a bitch. I didn't really want to tell Grant about what had happened. He wouldn't have believed me. I already had my fair share of ridicule from him in the past. As he tore bites from the tacos, I felt sick. I just wanted to go home. I had a ways to bike anyways. I told Grant bye and that we should meet up again soon. We fucking better, brother. I ain't got shit else to do. I'll be here, man. That was the last time I spoke to Grant. Everyone was set on believing that Grant had just skipped town to escape debt. I didn't mention what I saw. I didn't mention it to anyone.